Sorry. Were you going to introduce me?
I am going to introduce you. Yeah. Okay. Again, because people are logging in from around the world, we have to start and finish promptly as advertised. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Baroness McIntosh, who's going to speak to, well, there's the title of her presentation, and off you go. Well done.
Thank you very much indeed. Good morning, welcome, bienvenue, just to show my global credentials. I'm delighted to be here and to see such a success for the third Global Summit. So congratulations to all involved. I'd like to welcome our CEO of PASS, who, if we have any difficult questions on PASS, Proof of Age Standards Scheme, our CEO will be delighted to take them at the end. So I'm really here with two IDs. That's me, looking very noble, I hope. So I'm both a member of the House of Lords. I sit on the Conservative benches, and this is a particularly busy time that I'll come on to share with you. I'm a lawyer by profession, and when I came to the House of Lords in 2015, I was invited to chair the 9-month select committee looking into it was called the review of the Licensing Act 2003. So I do spend a little bit of time just talking about the foundation of where we were with the Licensing Act 2003. These committees work cross-party, and I thought some of the conclusions and recommendations we made were very positive, and we want to keep building on them. So, slight introduction to myself and to prove my global credentials. I was born, and in fact I went on to attend and graduate from Edinburgh University. My mother came from Denmark, and I was particularly close to my Danish grandmother, and I wanted to speak Danish fluently, so I enrolled at Aarhus University, and I started my masterpiece on joint ventures in the European Union. And that will be my retirement job, because I ran out of funding. So the story of my life, and it was incomplete. I then went on to serve a stage, an internship in DG4 of the European Commission, looking at competition. It was a fantastic opportunity. I'm afraid I'm a pro-European nut. And delighted to see a Greek in the proper geek in the audience. I feel bitterly disappointed for all the opportunities that I had to both study in Europe, to work in Europe, is not actually going to be passed down to the next generations. So one of the main bills in the next parliamentary session will be a reset of our relationship with the European Union. So I do hope that we can nudge towards more mobility for all age groups, but particularly for young people, because we are woeful in this country at speaking languages. And the whole point of negotiating and talking to people is to understand their culture, their language, and their history. So that certainly helped me. I then went on to practice in 2 different law firms. A bit back to front, I was then admitted to the Scottish Bar because I realised I'd earn more money if actually I was fully qualified. A bit late to the game, but if I was fully qualified, I would earn more money. And I never looked back. I went on to be a staffer. I advised the Conservatives in the European Parliament, and then was elected for 2 terms to serve in the European Parliament for East Anglia, which was the gateway to Europe. So I thought it was a very good fit. We had 2 airports, Stansted Airport and Southend, and the Port of Harwich, that used to sail to Europe, and I think they still do. They've got one ferry that goes to the Hook of Holland. And then I was elected to the House of Commons, and I served for 4 terms in North Yorkshire. As I mentioned, I went on to chair the Excellent Committee on Licensing Act 2003, and in 2017, I was asked to be non-executive chair of the National Proof of Age Standards Board. So you'll all be familiar with probably more familiar than me, the law currently existing on age-related sales offences in respect of alcohol, the general rule and the more specific rule as to how alcohol can be sold and served. And it was interesting that it was aimed at really under 16s for alcohol as part of a meal, and under 18 for other licensed premises. And I mentioned that, if I remember, I'll come on to talk about the new proof of age required for 13 to 15-year-olds, which is a first under the Online Safety Act. Obviously, and this is a good fit with PASS, the licensing objective is protection of children from harm. And the key focus of PASS, and I notice Andrew Chivers, who until recently was the leading director on the board, but we are a community interest company. It's a not-for-profit company, and we put children and protecting children from harm at the heart of all that we do. And why I feel so strongly about this, obviously, one of our members is Kate Nichols, the hospitality industry lead advocate. And I believe that children especially suffered probably more than any other category. We know that the NHS service suffered more than anybody else, but hospitality and retail suffered hugely under COVID through the lack of access. And of course, children's lives, particularly those who were students, but there was no access to the nighttime economy, no access to shops. So this is something that following COVID in 2020, we've been really working to come to grips to open up the economy again. So again, the further conditions that were set out, the licensing objective, protecting children from harm, restriction on the hours when children could be present, restrictions on certain ages when specified activities can take place, and access on children under 18 in certain circumstances. And these, I mean, you'll be very familiar with these. So, but that was obviously the revised guidance is interesting because Section 182 is something that we're still trying to amend under the Licensing Act 2003. The difficulty with, you'll be familiar with primary legislation and secondary legislation in the form of regulations implementing acts of Parliament. Guidance, of course, is not statutory, so it doesn't have the same force of law. And I think for practitioners, legal practitioners who are licensing practitioners, planning practitioners as barristers or solicitors find this so frustrating that the statutory guidance does not have the force of law. This goes back to 2024. The government consulted on whether to allow digital identities and technology to play a role in verification of alcohol sales, and then whether to amend the legislation to specify that sales of alcohol should not take place face-to-face unless age verification should take place at the point of delivery as well as sale. That consultation is now 2 years old, and we are still waiting for the government to act following that. So the Proof of Age Standards Scheme is now 25 years old. It was established in 2001 as a recognisable way of endorsing proof of age card schemes. As I said, we're a community interest company of community interest, whatever it is, CIC, not for profit. We are supported by the Home Office. We recognised by the Chartered Trading Standards Institute, and importantly, the National Police Chief Council. We're all supported by a number of trade bodies, and we act as an umbrella. So our members issue cards, but we do not issue cards ourselves. And the aim is to protect young people while allowing legitimate sales of alcohol and enabling the nighttime economy and other outlets to function effectively. I don't know if that figure is entirely up to date, but 6 million cards have been issued since 2001. So that's quite impressive. We're familiar with the physical proof of age standard scheme, and we have Will here from My ID. Some of the recent developments I hope to remember to come on to discuss. Obviously, the physical card will remain extremely important for the foreseeable future. And I was just saying earlier, you'll be aware that we have local elections coming up, and you have to now prove ID, not for your age, but you are who you say you are on the electoral roll. Well, I was so clever, for security reasons, I didn't want to put my name, McIntosh, down because people could trace them where I lived. So I put my married name down, and I suddenly realised I've got no ID to show my married name. So I think I'm going to have to apply. You form an orderly queue who wants to sell me a proof of age card, but I think I'm going to need to apply for one for the next local elections, because I'm not allowed to vote in a general election. And then obviously we're moving forward to I thought I had a slide on digital pass. It might come later, but I'm excited about the introduction of digital pass. It was all going terribly well. And obviously, we all want to have, particularly the younger people, want to have access of ID on their phone. And I think the beauty of the physical card is that you can leave your driving license, your passport, which are very expensive. Passport's going to cost over £100 now to reissue. So you can leave those at home, and then you can bring your physical card. So obviously this will be a completely different ball game if we do reach a single system with regulators and enforcement bodies can treat digital proof of age as an acceptable ID for all age-restricted products and services. So this is the start of the journey. Seems quite a slow journey. It was interesting, I sat in on one of the events yesterday where the European Commission spoke and told us what was happening there. We had then a very interesting speaker from France who said that digital ID was one of President Macron's top priorities, but they're not yet that either. So we all seem to be moving at the same pace. Now, what I'd like to dwell on for a moment is the recent legislation and how it's opened up for particularly proof of age in a setting for children accessing online services. And it's very topical because you may be aware that today the Prime Minister has hauled in all the big social media bodies. I didn't see what level the debate was, what level were they going to be the CEOs? Was Elon Musk going to be there? But they probably thought it was probably the more hands-on people that would attend. But the big debate at the moment is, are we going to ban social media for under 16s? And that was topical. You'll see at the bottom, I refer to my colleague, Lord Nash, who had an amendment which was carried in the Lords to ban social media for under 16s, and that we'd need to have age verification to prove that you're 16 or over. So that was carried in the House of Lords, and now I'll come on to explain what the procedure is as to whether or not it will become law. So the Online Safety Act 2023 established that proof of age had to carry a new duty of care for online platforms. So this was a first, and it did take a huge amount of parliamentary time to go through, but it was important to get the legislation right. And then again, you had Ofcom guidance, which is not statutory, published in 2025 to allow age verification checks for online users. So that's where potentially both the physical card and eventually a DE pass, a digital ID will come into effect. Now, yesterday we discussed the fallout, the excellent news from Apple that age verification conditions having changed in the UK, they will now require physical cards to be shown. They are trusted and recognised now by Apple, as well as the government and police, as a form of ID. And Scott Green, who I think is still the acting Chief Constable for the West Midlands, hopefully will be confirmed as the incoming Chief Constable, remains the lead for the police, particularly on alcohol sales, but proof of age more generally. As I mentioned earlier, we're still waiting for the regulations to amend the mandatory licensing conditions authorising digital IDs for age verification and the purchase of alcohol. Then you will be aware that the government have announced a digital ID consultation they announced a people's panel and a consultation on digital ID, which closes after 8 weeks on the 5th of May. To be honest, the government didn't do their homework and preparation when they announced the original mandatory ID. It was meant to resolve this conundrum of people coming over on boats and working here illegally. And London, probably Manchester, Birmingham, seem to have quite a strong black economy where these people are working, often for food delivery companies. And you know that they're probably not legal because they're cycling around or driving on e-scooters with face masks on because they don't want to be identified. So the idea was to have a mandatory digital ID technology. And the fallout from their own backbenchers was horrendous. I was surprised by the reaction from the Conservative and Lib Dem benches. I suppose the Lib Dem benches, more libertarian, didn't want to have anything mandatory. If it was by choice, that was a different matter. But I've lived and worked in countries that require ID, and I don't have a problem with it. Effectively, it's the photo page of your passport that you walk around with. And we were asked, we were playing something like rounders on a Sunday in Brussels as stagiaires. We were behaving, we were not doing anything illegal, we were not drinking alcohol, we were not taking any substances, we were not sniffing glue, but we did not have our ID. And we were asked to present ourselves pretty damn quickly to the local police station to show that we had the right to live and work there, which we did. So the question you're asking yourself, most likely, is why is there not a firmer direction from the government on these issues? Why are we not having any decisions? I am not here to speak for the government or make excuses for the government or speak for the action of any party, because I'm a humble backbencher. But some of the delays in decision-making, I think, if anything, will remain in place for most of this year. And the phrase we're hearing most at the present time is, we will take these decisions, whatever the issue is, we will decide when legislative time allows. And they're arguing that there is no legislative time. Well, we're reaching the end of the first parliamentary session, which seems to have gone on for about 18 months, 15 months, since the government was first elected in 2024. It seems an awfully long time ago. And they have 60 bills, not all of which will pass before we reach prorogation, where this parliamentary session will close on either the 29th or the 30th of April. We are currently in ping pong. It sounds a ridiculous thing. It's not a table tennis match. But the bill and the amendments will pass now between the Lords, including the National Amendment. I think it might have been voted on even. So the House of Commons voted to reject. Obviously, the government have got a huge majority. So the Labour MPs voted against the National Amendment. It will come back to the Lords this week. And I think we can insist twice. We realise that we are the junior house. We are not elected, even though we've been elected. Our role is to make the government think twice. But beyond that, we realise that they're the directly elected powers that be, so we must stop there. So I am not hopeful that the King's speech on the 13th of May will necessarily include anything like this. We haven't seen the regulations giving effect to the mandatory licensing conditions. They will go through, I would imagine, very quickly, but we don't even know. We're hearing good reports, but we don't even know to what extent the T's have been crossed and the I's dotted. So another international development, obviously, was the court judgment in the Meta case, which is going to be appealed in the US. But the big debate in this country on social media, I think in schools, is whether it's going to be mandatory. Apparently 60% of children, it has been made mandatory that you cannot access, 16-year-olds cannot access social media in Australia. So can you tell me, please, how 60% of school children in Australia are still accessing social media? answers on a postcard, please. So that's where we are in Parliament. I think that takes us to the end of the slideshow. So I hope I've been sufficiently provocative to make you think and ask some questions. And if there are any directly relating to PASS, either Mel, a CEO, or I will answer them. But thank you very much indeed for the opportunity. It's been marvellous, John. Thank you.
Just to respond very briefly on the Australia point, the organisation that commissioned the research that came out with this figure of 60% of children still having social media accounts, even though they are under the age of 16, are well-known opponents of the idea of having a ban in the first place. So it's not exactly objectively based research necessarily, but there's certainly an issue. And what I hear from my colleagues in Australia is that the age verification, the social media platforms haven't been particularly diligent or energetic in implementing the kind of solutions that companies in this room provide. So that may well change too. But anyway, there we are. Any questions or comments? Baroness? Yeah. Just say who you are.
Olan Soshinsky, Sofix European Project. I was wondering, was there any consultation process with children before this legislation went into consideration even?
As far as I know, there was. And in fact, everything we do, I'm now serving on a select committee looking at the environment, which obviously is very... children are very clued up on the environment and climate change. So we're looking at drought. And we had 3 sessions with children. So I think there was quite... It'll be... online. What I obviously, when I was an opposition spokesman, I used to look at the responses to consultations to think up how to amend the draft legislation that was coming before us. The irritating thing now is that obviously there's 45,000 responses to one consultation, which doesn't conclude for another month. I don't think you can put all those responses online. So there is no way of knowing who responded, but yes, they were invited to respond. And I think obviously it's absolutely, and I hope you all replied to and will reply to the current consultation on the People's Panel. And I think there's another one on the driving licence model as well. There are 3 consultations at the moment where you will all have a role to play in how the law comes into effect.
There is also, there's only 300 children in, there's only 300 children involved, but there is a small-scale study where 100 children somehow or another will not have access to any social media for a month. 100 children will have access for this month, the trial period, and the other 100 will have limited access. And that's part of trying to get some view about what the consequences of introducing a ban might be. It's a tiny, tiny sample. And so I don't think academics will be very impressed by it.
So say I'm one of the 100 who's not allowed access, which would really hurt me if I was a child. It hurts me if I was an adult, as an adult. But what if I went onto my friend's phone and accessed theirs? I mean, they're quite cute children to find a way around it.
I think the 100 children volunteered not to have access.
Okay.
So they'll be on their best honesty, they're on or best behaviour. We'll see. It's 3...
self-selecting data set,
no.
children are volunteering.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know the detail of it, but at 300, it's a tiny, tiny number. It won't stand up to academic scrutiny.
Maybe as a small comment, in my high school in Poland, there's already 800 in one school. So representation is, well, not really there, I think.
Yeah. I think... I don't want to do consultations down, but you know yourself, if there's a planning application near you and they have a consultation, they go ahead and do exactly what they were going to do beforehand. But I think what is important, I think the government genuinely doesn't know which direction to go. You have the technology and the experience to explain to the government, for example, how can you ask for Bluetooth connectivity if there's no Wi-Fi in a store? And it's so self-evident to those of you that know the business, but it's not self-evident to the officials who are drafting this. So you don't need to respond to every single question on the consultation. There are probably 2 key parts of the document on the consultation on digital ID. And I do urge you to show what will work in practice and what won't, because it's a common sense solution that we need to find to go forward.
I think the most likely outcome, this is I've not written or spoken on pro-ban or anti-ban, because I think it's fairly obvious what the government are going to do. They will wait and see how, at least a year, to see how the Australian experiment went and see how the robust sort of research that was done into that experiment and some sort of consensus emerges about how well it did or didn't work, and learn from that. And that's what will determine what, in the end, the government here decides to do. That 60% figure, it's all over the media at the moment. That's not surprising because it's an easy, big headline. But the basis of the research, as I say, was commissioned by an organisation that has long been opposed to any kind of ban. And I doubt that that will stand up to rigorous scrutiny. So, chap at the back.
Just while he's getting the phone, can I, the microphone even, can I just say, the interesting thing about the white paper and the consultation is that the government has gone away from it being digital only. They have very clearly said that physical and other alternatives will be acceptable. So it's up to you guys to say what it should be. No.
Thank you. Michael Murphy from the ICO. The pass card for 13 in Scotland is issued to every student to allow bus pass use as a physical card.
Yeah.
Query if PASS or your representative bodies are trying to move that onto a digital platform so that the students have that ability to use the pass card for wider online uses as well. And if so,
yeah, what's
the intention to try to encourage a similar sort of scheme in the other 3 countries of the UK?
Can I just say congratulations on winning the award yesterday?
Thank you very much.
Many congratulations. I'm going to ask Mel to answer that, if she would.
So Young Scot are one of our card issuers and one of our bigger card issuers. And we had initial conversations with them very early on about the whether they would be able to digitalise physical pass cards. And those conversations have been ongoing. I last spoke with them a couple of weeks ago, and we have another planning meeting about how we roll that out strategically, what that looks like, and what tech needed to do that. So those conversations are ongoing at the moment, as they are with the other 3 areas as well.
Okay, because you'll be aware that the OT does accept the pass card for their digital ID. So there is a mechanism already for pass to be digitalized.
So YOTI are not able to accept DPasses currently at the moment as it stands.
And I don't think the legislation is in place yet to allow it. So I think it's cart before horse, sort of what should people be doing? I think that's where the confusion lies at the moment, very, very much.
Sorry, just to add, you're right about otherwise people won't hear me. No one said my voice is too small. Just to say, I mean, we're issuing, as you know, free cards and making available free cards across the UK for 13 to 15-year-olds. YOTI and other digital IDs do accept pass cards such as Young Scot and Citizen Card as an anchor document. So you're right, 13 to 15-year-olds across the UK can get a physical pass card, which they can then use to create their digital ID.
Yeah.
Is there one? I'm afraid we have to be very strict on time because people logging in from around the world at specific times because they've seen it, as it were, pre-advertised. So one last question or comment? Okay, otherwise, thank you very much.